Chapter 1. Word of the Week. My name is AJ, and I hate the L word. Do you know what the L word is? I can't say it. It's too gross. We had just finished putting our backpacks into our cubbies and pledging the allegiance when my teacher, Mr. Granite, went over to the whiteboard. "It's time for our word of the day," he said as he picked up a marker. "Today, our word is," and then he wrote it on the board in big letters, L-O-V-E. "Love," said Mr. Granite. "What?" He said the L word. Ugh, disgusting. "Yuck," shouted Ryan, who will eat anything, even stuff that isn't food. "That's a 4-letter word," shouted Michael, who never ties his shoes. "And he said it out loud," shouted Neil, who we call the nude kid, even though he wears clothes. "Yes, tomorrow is Valentine's Day," said Mr. Granite. "The day of love." He said it again. All of us guys were falling off our chairs and choking and gagging and freaking out. "Boys," said Andrea Young, this girl who is always rolling her eyes. If you roll your eyes too much, they roll right out of your head. That's a fact. "I love Valentine's Day." "Me too," said her crybaby friend Emily, who agrees with everything Andrea says. "I love Valentine's Day." "Can I go to the nurse?" I asked Mr. Granite. "I think I'm going to be sick." "What's the matter, AJ?" "Everybody keeps saying the L word," I told him. "You mean love?" asked Mr. Granite. "Ew!" I shouted. "You said it again! Help! Call an ambulance! I need to go to the hospital." "You're being silly, AJ," Mr. Granite told me. "I bet you love lots of things." "Oh, yeah? Name one." "You love your parents, don't you?" asked Mr. Granite. "Well, yes," I admitted. "Of course I love my parents." "And I've heard you say how much you love skateboarding, right?" "I guess so," I admitted. "And I know how much you love playing pee-wee football every Saturday, AJ," said Mr. Granite. "Yeah." I couldn't argue with that. I do love playing football. "So, there are some things that you love." Mr. Granite had a point. I do love my parents, skateboarding, and football. But I still don't like the L word. Mr. Granite told us that the L word is also about tolerance and acceptance and peace in the world. That's what we should celebrate on Valentine's Day. "I'll tell you what is my favorite part about Valentine's Day," said Mr. Granite. "Getting chocolate." Chocolate? If there's one thing that I really love, it's chocolate. I think I love chocolate more than anything in the whole world. I guess I can put up with some of that mushy L word stuff if there's the chance that I might be getting chocolate. "Valentine's Day is going to be fun," Mr. Granite told us. "We're going to have a party. But for now, let's get to work. I know another thing you all love. Math. So turn to page 23 in your—" Mr. Granite never had the chance to finish his sentence, because you'll never believe in 1,100,000 years who walked into the door at that moment. Nobody. It would hurt if you walked into a door. But you'll never believe who walked into the doorway. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. But you have to read the next chapter. So na-na-na-boo-boo on you. Chapter 2. His name is Pierre. It was our principal, Mr. Klutz. He has no hair at all. I mean, none. I wonder if hats slip off his head because they have nothing to hold on to. Mr. Klutz, said Mr. Granite, to what do we owe the pleasure of your company? That's grown-up talk for, what are you doing here? I have big news, Mr. Klutz announced. He has a big nose, I whispered to Ryan. Everybody was buzzing because we were going to get some big news. Mr. Klutz held up his hand and made a peace sign with his fingers, which means, shut up. Guess what, kids? Said Mr. Klutz. Your class is going to get an exchange student. Exchange student? What's that? I raised my hand, and Mr. Klutz called on me. Does that mean we can exchange one of our students for something else? I asked. I say we exchange Andrea for a video game system. Oh, snap, said Ryan. Andrea rolled her eyes. An exchange student is a boy or girl from a foreign country, Arlo, she said. Andrea calls me by my real name because she knows I don't like it. I knew that, I lied. What country does our exchange student come from? Mr. Granite asked. He came all the way from France, said Mr. Klutz. His name is Pierre. Pierre? Mr. Klutz had to be joking. We all started giggling and poking each other with our elbows. Did his parents name him Pierre because he peed in the air? I asked. My mom told me that when I was a baby, I used to pee in the air when she was changing my diaper. That's disgusting, Arlo, said Andrea. We're not supposed to talk about things like that in school. Can you possibly be more boring? I asked her. Mr. Klutz went into the hallway to get the French kid named Pierre. He was out there for a long time. I wondered what Pierre would be like. We were all glued to our seats. Well, not really. That would be weird. Why would anyone glue themselves to a seat? How would you get the glue off? Mr. Klutz came back into the classroom with Pierre. Pierre was holding a big platter, which he put on a table at the front of the room. Pierre, said Mr. Klutz, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Granite's third-grade class. OMG, whispered Andrea. Pierre is handsome. He's adorable, whispered Emily. All the girls were swooning and giggling and fanning themselves and making goo-goo eyes at Pierre. Even my friend Alexia, who was a tomboy, was freaking out. He's dreamy, Alexia said. Pierre did one of those deep bows like actors do at the end of a play. Bonjour, he said. Ooh, said Andrea. He's handsome, and he speaks French. Well, of course Pierre speaks French. He's from France. Everybody in France speaks French. What is Andrea's problem? Pierre, I have to go to a meeting, Mr. Klutz said, but I'll be back later to see how you're making out. Ew, disgusting. Oui, said Pierre. Oui means yes in French, said Andrea, who thinks she knows everything. They spell it O-U-I. That's weird. And I thought I was a bad speller. Those people in France totally don't know how to spell. Mr. Granite went into the hallway to talk with Mr. Klutz, so we were alone with Pierre. I am very happy to be in your classroom, Pierre told us. I am just learning how to speak English at my school, but I am not very good at it yet. He said it all in a weird French accent. The girls were still making goo-goo eyes at him. Pierre continued. So I hope you will, how do you say, bear with me? Bear with you? I shouted. I'm not taking my clothes off in school. Gross! Not B-A-R-E, Arlo, said Andrea. B-E-A-R. Pierre said, bear with me. There's a bear with him? I shouted. Where? Run for your lives, shouted Neil, the nude kid. Pierre has a bear. I hid under my desk. I didn't see any bears around, but you can't be too careful these days. For all I know, kids in France bring bears to school with them. Andrea got up from her desk and ran over to Pierre. My name is Andrea, she said, doing one of those girly curtsy things. It's a pleasure to meet you, Pierre. That's when the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. Pierre took Andrea's hand and kissed it. Ugh, gross. I would never kiss anybody's hand. And certainly not Andrea's. Hands are dirty. You don't know where that hand has been. There was a 50-50 chance that Andrea used that hand to pick her nose. The pleasure is all mine, Andrea. Pierre said, your eyes are like pools of water in the moonlight. What a dork. Pierre held on to Andrea's hand way too long. Andrea was giggling and blushing as she ran back to her seat. Then Emily got up and went over to Pierre. I'm Emily, she said, all giggly. Welcome to our class, Pierre. Pierre kissed Emily's hand, too. Your face is like an angel's, he said. I hope that we might become better acquainted. Emily was giggling and blushing as she ran back to her seat. After that, all the other girls in the class went running up to introduce themselves and get their hands kissed by Pierre. Even Alexia. I thought I was going to throw up. I'm never going to wash this hand again, Alexia said when she went back to her seat. There was no way I was going to go up and introduce myself to Pierre. I didn't want him slobbering all over my hand like a dog. Mr. Granite came back into the classroom and went to his desk. Mr. Klutz told me that Pierre will be with us for the rest of the week. The rest of the week? That's like forever. How many days are there in a French week? I asked. 7, said Mr. Granite. Wow, just like here. It's already Wednesday, Andrea said, so Pierre will only be here for 3 days. I brought a little, how do you say, gift from my home, Pierre announced. I like gifts. Maybe Pierre wasn't such a bad guy after all. He picked up the platter he had brought with him. It is cheese and crackers, said Pierre. What? Cheese and crackers? That's a gift? I thought he was going to give us something cool from France, like French fries or French toast. Who shows up at a new school with a platter full of cheese? What kind of cheese is it, Pierre? Asked Mr. Granite. It is called Munster cheese, said Pierre. Munster cheese? My dad told me he used to watch a TV show about that cheese when he was a kid. We have over 400 kinds of cheeses in France, said Pierre. 400? Those French people should make up their minds. The only kind of cheese I eat is American cheese. Each slice is wrapped up in its own piece of plastic, so you know it's good. Pierre walked around the room with his platter of cheese. It wasn't wrapped up in plastic. It was cut into little chunks, and each one had a toothpick sticking out of it. That was weird. Some of the kids tried a piece of cheese. When Pierre got to me with the platter, I leaned over to sniff the cheese. Gross! It was stinky. I guess they have toothpicks so you can use them to get the smell out of your mouth after eating the cheese. Ugh, it smells horrible, I said. Who cut the cheese? Very funny, Arlo, said Andrea, rolling her eyes again. Why can't a truck full of cheese fall on Andrea's head? The French cheese was gross. No way was I going to eat that stuff. It smelled like it was sitting out in the hot sun all day. I wasn't going to shake hands with Pierre, and I wasn't going to eat his stinky cheese either. That guy is weird. Chapter 3. A Teachable Moment. After Pierre passed around his stinky cheese, Mr. Granite told us to open our math books again. But you'll never believe who poked her head into the door at that moment. Nobody. Why would anybody want to poke their head into a door? I thought we went over that already in Chapter 1. But you'll never believe who poked her head into the doorway. It was Ms. LaGrange, our school lunch lady. She was wearing an apron and a chef's hat. Ms. LaGrange is from France, just like Pierre. Bonjour, said Miss LaGrange. I heard your class has a new exchange student from France. His name is Pierre, said Alexia. Blah, 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 Ms. LaGrange said to Pierre. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 Pierre said to Ms. LaGrange. Blah, 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 blah. I had no idea what they were saying because they were talking to each other in French. It made no sense at all. I don't know how anybody understands that stuff. Isn't French a beautiful language? Said Andrea. When I get older, I'm going to take a class and learn how to speak French. Me too, said Emily, who always does everything Andrea does. This is what I call a teachable moment, said Mr. Granite as he put down his math book. It's the perfect time for us to learn about another country. Yay! Shouted all the girls. Boo! Shouted all the boys. Learning stuff is boring. What would you like to know about France? Asked Miss LaGrange. I'm sure Pierre and I can answer any questions. Andrea started waving her hand in the air like she was stranded on a desert island and trying to signal a plane. So, of course, Ms. LaGrange called on her. Is it true that the French people gave us the Statue of Liberty? Andrea asked. Yes, said Ms. LaGrange. The Statue of Liberty was a gift from France. Very good, Andrea, said Mr. Granite. Little Miss Know-It-All had a big smile on her face. What a brown-noser! She knew perfectly well that the French people gave us the Statue of Liberty. She only asked that question so everybody would know that she knew the French people gave us the Statue of Liberty. Andrea is always doing that. How big is France? Asked Alexia. France is about the same size as Texas, said Ms. LaGrange. Wow, everybody said, which is Mom upside down. Did you ever go to the Eiffel Tower? Asked Michael. Oh, yes, many times, said Pierre. It is very, how do you say, cool. The Mona Lisa is in France, too, said Andrea, who was obviously trying to impress Pierre with how much she knows. Very good, Andrea, said Mr. Granite. Why can't a truck full of Mona Lisas fall on Andrea's head? Hey, I asked, in France, do you call French fries American fries? No, we call them pommes frites, said Pierre. We also eat frogs' legs? and snails, which we call escargot. Ew, gross! They eat snails! Maybe I'll make escargot for lunch tomorrow, said Miss LaGrange. Ugh, I'll be bringing my own lunch. I'd rather die than eat those escar things. Did you know that the hot air balloon, the parachute, and the submarine were all invented in France? Asked Miss LaGrange. They probably invented that stuff so they could get out of the country, I said. Why would they want to get out of the country, A.J.? Asked Mr. Granite. So they won't have to eat frogs' legs, snails, and stinky cheese anymore, I said. Oh, snap, said Ryan. Very funny, Arlo, said Andrea. Do you have Valentine's Day in France? Asked Emily. Oh, yes, said Pierre. But in France, every day is Valentine's Day. Oh, gross. There are lots of English words that come from French, said Little Miss Perfect, like souvenir and mayonnaise, and villain, dungeon, rendezvous, and camouflage, added Miss LaGrange. And croissant, turquoise, cinéma, and aviation, added Pierre. And thermometer, leotard, garage, and machine, added Mr. Granite. Blah, 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 blah. What a snooze fest. I thought I was gonna die from old age. We learned a lot of stuff about France from Pierre and Miss LaGrange. Did you know that just 12 years after our Revolutionary War, they had a revolution in France? So they were just a bunch of copycats. We also learned about some French guy named Napoleon, who was always sticking his hand in his shirt. Nobody knew why. I guess he had a rash or something. That guy should get some ointment to put on his stomach. Then Pierre taught us a song called Frère Jacques. It's about a guy who isn't sure if his brother is asleep or not. That song is weird. If my brother was lying there and I couldn't tell if he was asleep, I'd call an ambulance, not write some dumb song about it. We have certainly learned a lot about France this morning, said Mr. Granite. But it's time to get back to our work now. Turn to page 23 in your math books, please. That's when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Bring, bring, bring. The lunch bell in my school sounds just like the word bring. Nobody knows why. It was the lunch bell. We all cleared off our desks and got ready to go to lunch. I learned one important thing about France. If you talk about France long enough, you don't have to do math. Chapter 4. Lunch with Pierre. We walked in single file to the vomitorium. It used to be called the cafetorium, but then some first grader threw up in there, and it's been the vomitorium ever since. Ooh, sit next to me, Pierre, begged Andrea. No, sit next to me, begged Alexia. Can I sit next to you, Pierre? Begged Emily. I asked him first, said Andrea. All the girls were fighting over who would get to sit next to Pierre. That's good. They wouldn't be bothering us at our table for a change. I will sit next to all of you, lovely ladies, said Pierre. Maybe you can teach me some English. And maybe you can teach us some French, said Andrea, giggling. The guys and I sat down at our table. The girls crowded around Pierre at the next table. I hope I get to visit Paris someday, said Andrea, who was all goo-goo eyes. It's so romantic. Maybe I will take you there someday, Andrea, said Pierre. Ooh, went all the girls. Andrea was all giggly and red-faced. We took out our lunches. We all watched as Pierre opened his backpack. I was sure he was going to pull out a bunch of frog's legs and snails and French onion soup and other stinky, gross stuff they eat in France. "I have a baguette," Pierre said. "What's that?" I asked. "A little bag?" But Pierre pulled out this giant bread thing. It was like 2 feet long. I bet that thing is the longest bread in the history of the world. You could have a sword fight with that bread. "Wow," everybody said, which is Mom upside down. Pierre also took out some more of his stinky cheese. He never runs out of that stuff. Pierre broke off pieces of bread and cheese and handed them around to the girls. The guys and I ate our lunch without saying anything. We were trying to listen to what they were saying at the next table. "Pierre, what is this called in French?" Andrea asked as she held up a piece of cheese. "That is fromage," Pierre replied. "Fromage is the French word for cheese." "How do you say napkin?" Emily asked, holding up her napkin. "Serviette," said Pierre. "How do you say fish?" asked Alexia. "Fish is poisson," said Pierre. "That sounds like poison," all the girls said, giggling uncontrollably. "Oh, Pierre, you are simply adorable," said Andrea. The girls were all laughing their heads off, even though Pierre didn't say anything funny. "I don't like Pierre," I finally whispered to the guys. "Me neither," said Michael. "I think you're jealous of him, AJ," whispered Neil, the nude kid. "Me? Jealous?" I said. "I'm not jealous of him." Well, maybe I was a little jealous of Pierre. He was really handsome, and he had a cool French accent, and the girls were giving him all the attention. "You're jealous that Andrea likes Pierre," said Neil. "I am not," I said. "I can't stand Andrea." "Ooh," Ryan said. "AJ says he can't stand Andrea. They must be in love." "When are you and Andrea gonna get married?" asked Michael. If those guys weren't my best friends, I would hate them. Chapter 5. Girls Are Weird. After lunch, we went out to the playground for recess. Michael grabbed a football, and we started throwing it back and forth. "Hey, Pierre!" yelled Ryan. "Want to throw the football with us?" "Merci, but no," said Pierre. "I don't know how to play." "We can teach you," said Neil, the nude kid. "Play with us, Pierre," begged Andrea. "Oh, yes," begged all the girls. "Play with us, please." Pierre ran over to the girls. They were playing hopscotch and jacks and jump rope and other girly games we refused to play. I kept looking over at the girls while we threw the football back and forth. "You are so much fun, Pierre," Andrea shouted as she hopscotched. "The boys never want to play with us." After we got tired of throwing the football around, me and the guys sat down on the grass to watch the girls playing with Pierre. "Look at that guy," I said. "He actually looks like he's having fun playing with the girls." "And they're all making goo-goo eyes at him," said Ryan. We watched Pierre and Andrea go over to the swings together. That's when the most amazing thing in the history of the world happened. Pierre took off his jacket. Well, that's not the amazing part. I'm sure Pierre takes off his jacket all the time. The amazing part was what he did with his jacket. There was a puddle of water in front of one of the swings. After Pierre took off his jacket, he put it down on the ground over the puddle, right in the water. Then he made a deep bow, and Andrea stepped on the jacket to get to the swing. What? Me and the guys couldn't believe our eyes. Andrea could have just walked around the puddle to get to the swing, but Pierre ruined a perfectly good jacket so Andrea wouldn't have to walk a couple of feet. "Oh, Pierre," I heard Andrea say, "you are so gallant." I'm not sure, but I guess gallant means a guy who throws his clothes into puddles of water. We all watched Andrea and Pierre swing on the swings. They were talking to each other for a long time, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. Bring, bring, bring. Recess was over. We lined up to go back inside the school. All the girls ran over to Andrea. "You won't believe what happened," Andrea told them. "Pierre just told me I am his special Valentine." "Eek!" all the girls screamed. "Not only that," Andrea said, "but he asked me to go out for ice cream with him after school today." "Eek!" "You are the luckiest girl in the whole world," said Emily. "I wish Pierre would invite me out for ice cream," said Alexia, who used to be cool before Pierre showed up. "I can't believe you and Pierre are going on a date," said Emily. "It's not a date," Andrea told the girls. "It's just ice cream." "It's an ice cream date," screamed Emily. "Eek!" "Don't be silly," said Andrea. "Pierre and I are just friends." "But he's a boy," Emily said. "So that means Pierre is your boyfriend." Eek! Girls are weird. Chapter 6. The greatest idea in the history of the world. The ice cream shop has the best ice cream in town. After school, me and the guys decided to go over there so we could spy on Andrea and Pierre. But we didn't want to go inside the ice cream shop. We watched what was going on from across the street. It was cool. We were like secret agents. Neil got a pair of binoculars for his birthday, so he was our lookout as we hid in the bushes. A few minutes after we arrived, Andrea and Pierre showed up. We watched them go inside the ice cream shop and sit in a booth near the window. "What are they doing?" I asked Neil as he peered through the binoculars. "It looks like he's giving her a card or something," Neil reported. "It's probably some mushy love poem," I said. "It's his special Valentine." A few minutes passed. "What are they doing now?" asked Ryan. "He's giving her a stuffed animal," reported Neil. "She's giggling and acting all girly." "A stuffed animal?" said Michael. "Where did he get a stuffed animal?" "From Rent a Stuffed Animal," I told him. "You can rent anything." "What are they doing now?" Michael asked a few minutes later. "They're eating ice cream," Neil reported. "It looks like strawberry." "Strawberry?" We were all bummed out. It didn't bother us that Pierre was with Andrea. It bothered us that they were eating ice cream and we were hiding in the bushes across the street. And I love strawberry. We were also bummed because the next day was going to be Valentine's Day. We would have to make cards and read poems and talk about the L word all day. It was going to be horrible. "Let's get out of here," I said to the guys. "That Pierre is one smooth operator," Michael said as we walked down the street. "He probably likes the L word," I said. "He loves love," said Neil. "I hate love." Pierre thinks he's so great, Ryan complained. All the girls are making goo-goo eyes at him, said Ryan. Even Alexia likes him, said Michael, and she used to be cool. We can't let that French pastry make us look bad, said Ryan. We all laughed because Ryan called Pierre a French pastry. Yeah, we can't let that French pastry push us around, said Neil. That's right, I said. We should teach Pierre a lesson. Yeah, said Ryan. What do you think we should... Ryan didn't get the chance to finish his sentence because you'll never believe in 1,100,000 years who came running over to us. It was Pierre. Hey, guys, he said. Why aren't you out eating ice cream with Andrea? Asked Michael. She's your special Valentine, right? Andrea had to go to her, how do you say, clog dancing class? Pierre replied. Clog dancing is a kind of dancing that plumbers do. Can I hang out with you guys for a while? Maybe I can practice my English with you? I didn't want to be Pierre's English teacher. I looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Michael. Michael looked at Neil. Neil looked at me. I looked at Pierre. And that's when I came up with the greatest idea in the history of the world. Sure, Pierre, I said. There are lots of English words and expressions that they don't teach you in school. Like what? Asked Pierre. Like vomit, I said. It means you have a good feeling. So if you really like somebody, you can tell them that they make you vomit. That's a good word, said Pierre. Tell me another one. The guys were all trying hard not to laugh. Well, in America, we call candy snot, I told Pierre. People really like eating snot. Or finding snot in their pocket, added Ryan. Or getting snot in their lunchbox, added Michael. I love eating snot, said Neil. I see, said Pierre. So I could ask a girl if she wants some of my snot? Sure, I said. Girls love it when you share your snot with them. We made up all kinds of other rude expressions and taught Pierre how to say them. It was hilarious. Maybe Valentine's Day won't be so bad after all. Chapter 7. Pierre is out of control. When I got to school the next morning, there were red and pink flowers and hearts all over the hallways. Ugh, disgusting. I have bad news for you. A real heart doesn't look anything like those hearts they have on Valentine's. I saw a picture of a real heart once on TV. It was gross. Mr. Granite wasn't in class yet. All the girls were giggling around Andrea, who was telling them about her big ice cream date with Pierre. When we grow up, she said, Pierre and I will probably get married. Eek! All the girls screamed. We're going to move to Paris and eat baguettes all day, said Andrea. Pierre walked in the doorway. He was wearing one of those weird beret thingies that people in France wear on their heads all the time. Nobody knows why. The girls lined up to get their hands kissed by Pierre. Happy Valentine's Day, Pierre, said Andrea, holding her hand out. Andrea, my special Valentine, said Pierre. I would like to give you a box full of snot for Valentine's Day. What? Andrea said. I want to share my snot with you, Pierre said. I have some very fine snot that I brought from France. Andrea took a step backward. It looked like she was going to faint. "You brought snot? From France?" she asked. "Yes. The best snot in the world is French snot," said Pierre. "They sell snot in stores there?" she asked. "Oh, yes. It is very expensive, and my family buys many boxes of snot. We store them in the pantry." Andrea sat down. She looked like she was going to be sick. Emily held out her hand for Pierre to kiss. "Your eyes look like giant toilets in the moonlight," said Pierre as he kissed Emily's hand. "Your feet smell like cabbages that have been left out in the sun too long. If I pick my nose, may I also pick yours? Your hair is so beautiful. Do you have head lice?" Emily started crying and went running out of the room. What a crybaby. That's when Mr. Granite arrived. "Happy Valentine's Day, everyone," he said cheerfully. Pierre went over to Alexia and took her hand. "Every snowflake is different, just like every piece of your dandruff. Your body odor is pungent. Do you have fleas? Cockroaches must be happy to live in your underwear." "Pierre," said Mr. Granite, "what's gotten into you?" Pierre went over to Annette and took her hand. "I apologize," he said. "May I taste your earwax? The perfume you are wearing smells like elephant poop. Looking at your face makes me vomit." "Pierre," said Mr. Granite, "that is inappropriate language to use in school." Wow! Pierre must have believed everything we told him about speaking English. That guy will fall for anything. Andrea looked like she might start crying. "I thought I was your special Valentine," she said to Pierre. "You are, Andrea," said Pierre. "Your face is like an unwashed armpit. I would like to sprinkle your toenail clippings on my breakfast cereal." "That's not nice to say," Andrea said. "I fart in your general direction," said Pierre. "That's it," said Mr. Granite. "Pierre, go to the principal's office." What did I do?" asked Pierre. Me and the guys were falling all over each other trying not to laugh. This was going to be the best Valentine's Day ever. Chapter 8. This means war. When Pierre came back to class with Mr. Klutz, he looked really mad. "Do you have anything to say to the girls in the class, Pierre?" asked Mr. Klutz. "I'm sorry," Pierre said, looking at the floor. He sat down in his seat. He looked at me and made a mean face. "Maybe children are allowed to say those kinds of things in France," said Mr. Granite, "but we don't talk like that here. Do you understand?" "Oui," said Pierre. "Ha ha! In Pierre's face! I guess I showed him. Maybe everybody will stop treating him like he's so perfect." Mr. Klutz left. It was time for our Valentine's Day class party. My mom had given me little valentines to hand out to everybody in the class. So did all the other moms, so we all got lots of valentines. A few kids brought in cookies from home. Pierre brought in a big box of French chocolate. All right, it was about time we got some chocolate. "Sweets for the sweet," Pierre said as he handed out his chocolates to everybody. I hope there's no snot in there, I whispered to Ryan. Actually, Pierre's French chocolate was awesome. It was way better than our chocolate. This was the best Valentine's Day ever. I had humiliated Pierre and got to eat his chocolate too. But that's when the weirdest thing in the history of the world happened. Pierre stood up. Well, that's not the weird part, because Pierre stands up all the time. The weird part was what happened next. I would like to recite a poem I wrote in English, he said. It is for my special Valentine. Everybody looked at Andrea. Go ahead, Pierre, said Mr. Granite. We would love to hear your poem. So Pierre started reading. Your face is like the sun, shining there so bright. Your smile is like the sunrise at the end of night. Your eyes are like the ocean, where fishes swim and play. Your heart and mine are one, on this, our Valentine's Day. Pierre sat down. Everybody started clapping. Andrea looked like she was going to cry tears of happiness. All the other girls were making goo-goo eyes at Pierre. That was beautiful, Pierre, said Mr. Granite. I'm sorry I yelled at you. Oh, man! Everybody liked Pierre again. It was like he never said all that stuff about snot and vomit and underwear and head lice. Bummer in the summer. At the end of the Valentine's Day party, while everybody was cleaning up, Pierre pulled me aside. Teaching me those words was mean, AJ. Pierre said. Well, he was right about that. It was mean. I didn't like Pierre, and I didn't like him eating ice cream with Andrea. So is your face, I said to Pierre. If you don't know what to say to somebody, just say, so is your face. That's the first rule of being a kid. That is, as you say, the last straw, said Pierre. People are always running out of straws. I don't see why they don't just buy an extra box of straws when they go shopping. What do straws have to do with anything? I asked. This means war, AJ, said Pierre. Andrea is my special Valentine, not yours. You can have her, I said. I don't want her. 3 o'clock, Pierre said, pointing his finger at me. In the playground. I'll be there, Pierre, I said. Chapter 9. Rules for Duels. Fighting is wrong. You should never fight. My parents tell me that all the time. My teachers tell me that too. But what was I supposed to do? Everybody knows what 3 o'clock in the playground means. Pierre was challenging me to a fight. It would look really bad if I backed down. For the rest of the day, I couldn't pay attention to what Mr. Granite was trying to teach us. All I could think about was the big fight after school. I've never been in a fight before. I didn't really know what to do. AJ, you're gonna be great, Ryan kept telling me. Just keep your dukes up. That French pastry is going down. You are the man, AJ, said Michael. Finally, after 1,100,000 minutes, the clock on our classroom wall said it was 3 o'clock. Bring, bring, bring. Everybody grabbed their backpacks and rushed out to the playground. I mean everybody, even the 5th graders. I guess word got around that there was going to be a big fight after school. When I got out to the playground, Pierre was waiting for me. All the kids gathered in a big circle around us. Right behind me were my 2 best friends, Ryan and Michael. I looked at Pierre. Pierre looked at me. Then, suddenly, the crowd parted to let somebody through. It was Andrea. "Please don't fight, boys," she said. "Violence never solved any problems." What did violins have to do with anything? "Back off, Andrea," I yelled to her. "This is between me and Pierre." "I think you mean Pierre and me," said Andrea. "You should use correct grammar, Arlo." "Quiet," I shouted at her. "Can you possibly be more boring?" Andrea had distracted me. I had to focus my attention. I looked at Pierre. Pierre looked at me. "AJ," Pierre said, "I challenge you to a duel." Ooh! Everybody oohed. What? I thought we were going to fight. Is duel a French word that means fight? I didn't know what he was talking about. Michael and Ryan came over to me. "I saw a duel in a movie once," Michael whispered. "You're supposed to throw a glove on the ground in front of Pierre." What? Why would anyone throw a glove on the ground? I didn't even have a glove. It wasn't even that cold outside. Who wears gloves to school when it's not cold out? "Forget the glove," whispered Ryan. "Just keep your dukes up." I turned back to face Pierre again. "Do you wish to apologize to me, AJ?" Pierre asked. "What for?" I said. "You have offended my honor." Ooh! Everybody oohed. "I did not," I said. "Yes." "No." "Oui." "Oui." Pierre and I went back and forth like that for a while. Finally, Michael leaned over to me. "Next," he whispered, "you're supposed to say, 'Choose your weapon.'" "Weapon?" I asked. "I don't have any weapons. Nobody said anything about fighting with weapons." "That's the rules, AJ," said Michael. "Duels have rules." "Choose your weapon, Pierre," I said. Ooh! Pierre looked me in the eye. "I choose thumbs." Ooh! So he wanted to thumb wrestle, eh? No problem. I've been in plenty of thumb wars in my time, and I'm a pretty good thumb warrior, if I do say so myself. "I accept," I said. Ooh! Pierre put out his right hand. I put out my right hand. But you'll never believe who came running out to the playground at that moment. It was Mr. Klutz and a bunch of teachers. "Okay, break it up, you two," shouted Mr. Klutz. "There will be no fighting on school property, especially not on Valentine's Day. This is supposed to be the day of tolerance and acceptance and love. Remember?" Ugh, disgusting. He said the L word. "They're not fighting," said Alexia. "They're going to have a thumb war." "A what?" asked Mr. Klutz. We had to explain to him what a thumb war was. Can you believe that? Grown-ups don't know anything. "Oh, well, I guess that's okay," said Mr. Klutz. "You may proceed, as long as there's no violence." Why is everybody always talking about violins? And who would bring a violin to a thumb war? We didn't need musical accompaniment. "Okay, AJ," said Ryan. "This is for all the marbles." "What do marbles have to do with anything?" I asked. "Just beat him," said Michael. A hush fell over the crowd as Pierre and I faced each other once again. There was electricity in the air. Well, not really. If there had been electricity in the air, we all would have been electrocuted. "May the better thumb win," I said to Pierre. Pierre put out his right hand. I put out my right hand. We grabbed hold of each other's hand. It was very dramatic. "Aren't you on pins and needles?" Well, if you are, you should get off them and sit on a couch or something. Pins and needles hurt. I put my thumb next to Pierre's thumb. We started to move our thumbs back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, we both said. I declare a thumb war. 5, 6, 7, 8, we both said. I will make your knuckles ache. 4, 3, 2, 1, we both said. Who will be the strongest thumb? Pierre moved his thumb left. I moved my thumb left. Pierre moved his thumb right. I moved my thumb right. It was very exciting. Get him, Pierre, somebody shouted. You can beat him, AJ. Pierre moved his thumb right. I moved my thumb right. Pierre moved his thumb left. I moved my thumb left. We were frantically trying to get the upper hand. The upper thumb. You're going down, Pierre, I said. I don't think so, Pierre hissed back. Everybody was yelling and cheering and freaking out, even Mr. Klutz and the teachers. I almost had Pierre's thumb down, but he moved it away just in time. Then he almost had my thumb down, but I moved it away just in time. The tension was unbearable. And then, just before I was about to cover Pierre's thumb with my thumb, he turned the tables on me and covered my thumb with his thumb. No! I shouted. Pierre's thumb was pressed down on top of my thumb hard. I couldn't move it. Victory is mine, Pierre shouted. Vive la France! Chapter 10. The Truth About Pierre. Bummer in the summer. Pierre had beaten me fair and square at thumb wrestling. I thought I was gonna die. Everybody was hooting and hollering. My hand hurt. This was the worst thing to happen since National Poetry Month. I wanted to run away to Antarctica and go live with the penguins. Nice try, dude, said Ryan, putting his arm around me. You gave it your best shot. Michael gave me a thumbs up, but then he must have realized that was a dumb thing to do, considering that I had just lost the thumb war. Hey, we should take AJ out to the ice cream shop, Michael said. Maybe that will make him feel better. Ice cream? All right! Michael should be in the gifted and talented program for coming up with that idea. We walked 1,100,000 miles to the ice cream shop, and when we opened the door, you'll never believe who we saw in there. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. It was Pierre. But you'll never believe who was with him. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. It was Alexia. And they were both sitting at the same table. They had skateboards with them. That must have been how they got to the ice cream shop before we did. Alexia, I said, what are you doing here with Pierre? Eating ice cream, she said. What does it look like I'm doing here? I invited Alexia to join me to celebrate my thumb war victory, said Pierre. Wow, so Andrea wasn't Pierre's special Valentine after all. Maybe Alexia was Pierre's special Valentine. Or maybe Andrea was Pierre's special Valentine, but he was secretly going out for ice cream with Alexia behind Andrea's back. Or maybe Alexia was Pierre's special Valentine, but he was secretly going out for ice cream with Andrea behind Alexia's back. Valentine's Day was complicated. And it was about to get even more complicated because you'll never believe who came into the ice cream shop at that moment. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. It was Andrea and Emily. Andrea was holding the special Valentine that Pierre had given her. Andrea looked at Pierre. Pierre looked at Andrea. Pierre, shouted Andrea. Andrea, shouted Pierre. What are you doing here with Alexia? Asked Andrea. Yeah, said Emily. What are you doing here with Alexia? They're eating ice cream, I said. What does it look like they're doing? I... Pierre didn't know what to say, at least not in English. Pierre, said Andrea, you said I was your special Valentine. Yeah, said Emily. You said Andrea was your special Valentine. Andrea looked like she was going to cry. Pierre looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to do. He had to think fast. In France, all the girls are special on Valentine's Day. He finally told Andrea, there is plenty of love to go around. Don't you agree? No, shouted Andrea. That's it. It's all over between us, Pierre. Andrea ripped Pierre's special Valentine up into little pieces and threw them at Pierre. Oh, snap, said Ryan. I never want to see you again, Andrea told Pierre. Yeah, said Emily. Andrea never wants to see you again. It was the awesomest. You should have been there. And we got to see it live and in person. This is my worst Valentine's Day ever, Andrea said. And then she stomped out of the ice cream shop. Chapter 11. A Special Valentine. When I got to school the next morning, Pierre was lugging a suitcase up the front steps. What's in the suitcase, Pierre? I asked. Are you going to give us more stinky cheese? No, I am going back home to France today, he told me. But I wanted to say goodbye to my new friends before I leave. We got to our classroom, and Mr. Granite wasn't there yet. Pierre went up to each girl in the class and kissed her hand. They were all giggling and making goo-goo eyes and getting his email address so they could stay in touch with him. Finally, Pierre went over to Andrea. She was standing in the corner like she was hiding or something. Your eyes are like pools of water in the moonlight, Pierre said. Beat it, you two-timer, shouted Andrea. Oh, snap, said Ryan. Andrea, you will always be my special Valentine, Pierre said as he bent down to kiss Andrea's hand. Parting is such sweet sorrow. Don't touch me, she shouted as she slapped his hand away. Yeah, I told Pierre. Get in your S-car and go home. Au revoir, said Pierre, whatever that means, and then he left. Mr. Granite came into the classroom and told us to take our seats. I went to put my backpack in my cubby. When I got to my seat, Andrea came over to me. She was holding a Valentine. Oh, Arlo, she said, I've been thinking it over. You're my special Valentine. You always will be. Ooh! Everybody oohed. That's when the most horrible thing in the history of the world happened. Before I could do anything, Andrea leaned over and kissed me. Right on the lips. Ah, disgusting, I shouted, wiping my face on my sleeve. Ooh, Ryan said. Andrea kissed AJ. They must be in love. When are you and Andrea going to get married? Asked Michael. Leave me alone, I shouted at Andrea. Now I have to go boil my face. That's it. That's the last straw. I'm going to run away to Antarctica and go live with the penguins. Penguins don't go around kissing each other. I don't even think penguins have lips. Now that Valentine's Day is over, maybe people will stop saying the L word all the time. Maybe we can exchange Andrea for a video game system. Maybe French people will stop eating snails and throwing their clothes into puddles of water. Maybe Andrea will pick her nose with the same hand Pierre kissed. Maybe I'll bring gloves to school in case I need to throw one on the ground. Maybe Napoleon will take his hand out of his shirt and get some ointment for that rash. Maybe we'll have a sword fight with baguettes. Maybe kids in France will stop spelling words wrong and bringing bears to school with them. Maybe people will stop talking about violins, running out of straws, and walking into doors all the time. But it won't be easy.